Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, August 12th, 2021 meeting of the St. Tammany Parish School Board. Ms. Coakley, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Harrell?
Here.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Mrs. Hines? Here. Mr. Darman?
Here.
Mr. Luke? Here. Mr. Nation?
Here.
Mrs. Richardson? Mr. Winkler? Mrs. Baker? Here. Mr. Bencourt? Mrs. Lamy? Mr. Hersey?
Here.
Mr. Breaux?
Here.
Mr. Kuzan?
Here.
Mrs. Page?
Thank you, Ms. Coakley. Mr. Nation, would you mind leading us in invocation and pledge?
Let us pray. Direct us, O Lord, with your most gracious favor, that all our work, begun, continued, and ended in you, may find favor in your sight. And finally, by your mercy, may we obtain everlasting life through Christ our Lord. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Nation. Board members, do y'all have anyone that y'all would like to recognize? Thank you, Mr. Betancourt. Moving on, Mr. Javia, would you like to give us an update?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Harrell. Board members, everyone, thank you for having me tonight. I want to thank all the administration, all the employees for a wonderful start and a great first week. Nothing but great things from our employees and the schools we visited. All of our administrators and supervisors have been on our campuses, just gotten tremendous feedback. So thank you for a wonderful week. Also, I want to thank the parents and family for all their support. The first week is always a struggle. There's a lot of moving parts, trying to take care of and get everything in place, trying to make sure everything is balanced so we can take care of our children. And I appreciate all the parents' patience this past week. Personally, I want to thank all the bus drivers and the attendants. It's been very difficult on our transportation department. We've had a lot of manpower issues for multiple different reasons, but our bus drivers have stepped up and they've covered routes and done anything they've had to do to get our children to and from school safely. So I just want to tell Mr. Bodie and his staff, thank you for everything and thank you for your support through transportation. I know Mr. Winkler is not here tonight, but I want to thank him. Last week was a very difficult and trying night, very emotional. A lot of people very passionate about their children, and it's very difficult to run a meeting like that. So I want to thank him personally for doing his best efforts. And I just want to remind all of our speakers tonight to please be respectful, and we do want to hear what you have to say. So we are looking forward to hearing from you tonight. Let me just address the mask mandate a little bit. So as I told the board previous, Bessie will hear this mandate on August 18th, which is Wednesday of next week at 9 a.m. in the morning in Baton Rouge. They have been charged by the Attorney General to hear this motion and determine what the school systems around the state of Louisiana are to do. So we are waiting for that directive from them. But I will say, just like last year, if they do have a policy change or something to update, similar to what we did last year. Last year, it was the minimum safe standards that we had to adopt as a board. So I want to make sure that everyone realizes that if there is a policy change or something that must be updated, we will have to call a special meeting to make any changes from Bessie or to adopt any policies they have moving forward. So we will keep you posted on the meeting from Wednesday. I just want to kind of quickly go over a few things. Looking at the positivity rate for the entire parish of St. Tammany, the positivity rate right now is at 19.7%, which is 2 percentage points higher than it was the previous week. Their data is 1 week delayed. So that is, of course, last week's actual data, but it does show that we are up, the parish of St. Tammany, up 2 percentage points to 19.7. The average for the last 7 days in the parish of St. Tammany has been 280 cases a day. So that is what the parish by LDH is seeing completely parish-wide, is 280 positives a day. I do want to report that since the middle of July, we have been tracking, of course, our positives. In the month of June, we had one positive. That was one employee. We did not have any student positives during the month of June, and that included our accelerated learning camps and all that we had going on. From the middle of July to current, and then every week I'll be able to track the positives weekly. Our COVID team has been putting those numbers together, and we have reported these numbers to the LDH. Since the middle of July till today, current till today, we've had 266 positive students, and we've had 177 positive employees. That is to this point right now, current. That is as, like I said, of today, the 12th of August. So that's my report. Mr. President, if you have anything else.
I don't, board members, did y'all have any questions? Mr. Nation?
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. And thank you, Mr. Jabia, for your report. One question I do have, well, a couple of questions I've got, but one question I have. In the data, how many deaths have we had?
Zero.
Zero.
Yes, sir.
All right, that's where at least I look, is the death rate.
And the parish 7-day total, I think I looked at it today, was 1.2 for the entire parish of St. Tammany over the last 7-day average. That's a 7-day average.
Right. We've come a long way from this time last year.
Yes, sir.
The vaccines work. So given the fact that the vaccines are widely available for adults, I've been vaccinated. And given the fact that these things don't work, this is not the solution. And given the fact that the Attorney General has issued an opinion that Bessie is charged by the Constitution to rule on this matter, as you said, I think it's incumbent on this board to express how we feel to Bessie. I don't think we can just sit idly by. We don't have the authority, as the Attorney General says, to do anything about it, which we don't. Bessie is charged with that authority. But just as we've done in the past, this board has led, is the leading school system in this state, and this board is the leading board in this state. We've led on Common Core. I think we need to lead on this. And I think we need to lead and express to Bessie very clearly what we want. And I can say what I want, and other board members can choose to say what they think we should say to Bessie, but I believe we should tell Bessie very clearly that mask mandate should be mask should be optional. Parents should have the right to choose whether or not to mask their children. And I cannot believe in no good parent is, if these things actually do work, then no good parent is going to, I mean, I wouldn't. I'd put a mask on my child every day. And that Bessie also give leeway for our employees and volunteers to choose whether to mask or not, because vaccines are widely and freely available. I encourage everybody to be vaccinated. I am very pro-vaccine. But I'm also very anti-mandate. And so logic dictates two things can be true at once. And those two things, in my opinion, are definitely true. So with that in mind, I think we would be remiss and not, and frankly, well, we'd be remiss if we don't formally express to Bessie through a resolution, through just a simple motion, or a simple letter from the board president to the members of Bessie, how this board feels. And maybe the rest of the board doesn't feel like I do, and that's fine too. That's why this is a democracy. So with that being said, I'd like to move that we open the agenda to add a item on the agenda that will, for a resolution or a letter, however we want to call it, that will go to Bessie between now and next week, expressing that we ask for the mask mandates to be optional for parents, and that we ask the mask mandates to be optional for our employees and volunteers, given the fact that vaccines are widely available for adults and for those 12 and older. Again, it's your choice whether or not to get vaccinated, but then you as a grown adult have to deal with the repercussions of that, of your decision, as we all do with it in life. And that if Bessie's unwilling to do so, then they allow us, this local school board, to exercise that authority. And so with that, I'd like to move that we open the agenda to add that item.
All right, we have a second. Do we move on? Mr. Harrison?
Yes, in order to procedurally open the agenda, you do have to comply with 42:19. So you've had a motion and a second. You now have to allow public comment on whether to open the agenda. And then after that's completed, before a vote, you have to allow public comment again.
Okay.
I could
And the vote has to
I
be-
could read the provision if you would like into the record, but I was prepared for this motion today, so.
Okay, but public comment is on the opening of the agenda, not on anything that was said
Right
about
now, it's
mask.
strictly on whether to open the agenda.
Okay, thank you
Okay?
so much.
And again, it says, upon unanimous approval of the members present in a meeting of a public body, the public body may take up a matter not on the agenda. Any such matter shall be identified in the motion to take up with reasonable specificity, including the purpose of addition to the agenda. And then it says, prior to any vote on the motion to take up a matter not on the agenda, the public body, there shall be an opportunity for public comment. And then again, later, if it's on the agenda, then prior to a vote on it, if it doesn't make the agenda, then that's the end of it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do we have any members of the public that wish to speak on opening the agenda? Ma'am?
Hi, my name is Susan Wheeler. My children go to Slidell Junior High School, both of them, and I agree with Mr. Nation that we should open the agenda and make a vote to send information to the school board on how our board feels our school district should be ran.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir?
Yeah, I definitely agree with this position. Matter of fact, it's a lot about what I'm planning to speak about today, is that fact, which is that you guys are elected to not sit idle and not sit quiet, not sit on your hands. You know, we can do that. You know, we don't need to vote you guys in or pay you to do that. We ask that you speak out. You know, yeah, there's legality to how this process works. As much as some of us don't like it, we understand that. But we ask that you speak out, let your voices be heard, represent us, get uncomfortable, because some of us are very uncomfortable, right? So the least you could do is speak out and influence, right? You guys can make a difference. Arguably, the most powerful, most well-respected school board in the state. Leverage that.
Thank you, sir. Any additional public comments?
I believe in choice, and we have vaccines. You can choose to use a vaccine or not, or mask up, but choice is always best. Mandate, not good. All right, thanks.
Seeing no more additional public comments, do we have any questions from the board members about opening the agenda? Ms. Heinz?
I'm a little bit confused because Mr. Nation made it sound like opening the agenda that, Mr. Nation, do you intend to then make a motion that we send a letter? Or are you saying by opening the agenda, we're agreeing to send the letter?
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Now, as I understand the procedure, parliamentary procedure, right now, we have to get it on the agenda. And then once we get it on the agenda, then we will make a motion as to whether or not to send a letter or not, or the content of that letter. As I said, I know what I want to say in the letter, but you all may have other things you want to say in the letter. So this is just getting it on the agenda for discussion.
And it requires a unanimous
and
vote.
requires unanimous
on the
vote.
agenda.
That's why I'm asking specifically.
Any additional comments? Seeing none, everyone please vote to open, whether or not to open the agenda. And it is unanimous. Will we add, go ahead. Well, let me ask Mr. Harrison something.
The way it was done was by way of a motion to send a resolution to Bessie. It's broad enough. He stated the reasons for it. That's what's on your agenda right now. You, of course, could modify it the way it is, but it's now open for the board's decision as to the content of it. And prior to any vote on it, you'd allow public comment again.
Mr. Nation, since you've made the original motion, would you like to lead this?
Thank you. Yep, basically we'll reiterate what I said just a moment ago. So I would now move, because the first motion was just to get this on the agenda. So now I will now move that we ask the board president to send a letter to the members of the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education for the state of Louisiana and the state superintendent, copying the state superintendent and others that he may wish to copy, such as our legislative delegation, who I think need to hear this too, our legislative delegation from St. Tammany. But at least to the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, each member, and to the copying the state superintendent, that Bessie provide immediate relief to the parents of this parish to allow them the choice whether or not to send their children to school wearing a mask or not. Two, that they provide immediate relief to the employees and volunteers of this parish as to whether or not to wear a mask or not. Three, if Bessie is unwilling to do 1 and 2, that they at least provide us the ability then to delegate that authority that's granted to them in the Constitution, according to the Attorney General, the authority to come back and make those decisions for the parents we serve and the employees and volunteers who also work and serve the parents of this parish. Again, and this is all contingent, and I think this is important to state in the letter, so this needs to be part of the letter, Mr. Harold, that you would send, is that this is all contingent on vaccines being freely available and widely available. We are in a different place than we were this time last year. And masks, these things are not the solution. Vaccines are the solution. People need to get vaccinated. So that's what I move as to be the content of your letter. So.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Coakley. Ms.
I reserve the right to revise and extend my remarks.
Do we have a second for that motion? Mr. Betancourt seconded. Thank you, Ms. Betancourt. Mr. Bro.
Thank you. Seeing that the Attorney General is the law of the land and that his announcement was that the directive, the mandate by the governor is not legal, we decided we had to wait until the Bessie board, who is our ultimate authority, makes that decision. 2 months ago, this board voted for a policy to have masks being optional for the parents to decide. That motion and that policy is still in effect. Therefore, I would like to include in our letter the idea that until such time as we get direction from Bessie Board, we will abide by original policy, which is mask are optional. Thank you.
Mr. Kuzan.
Thank you. Does that mean that we would not have to vote on what you just said because we already have a motion to say that masks are optional? So there's no need for us to vote again if we're going to relay right on that. We're going to go back to the motion or the policy that we already have in effect.
I wasn't,
He didn't make an amendment. He didn't.
I wasn't proposing an amendment. We're discussing what, the motion was to send a letter. The contents of that letter is what this open discussion was about. So we're discussing the contents of the letter, and I would like that contents to be included in the letter.
I understand that. So what I'm saying, if that's in the contents of the letter, would a vote be necessary for us to take a vote? Since we would do it anyway.
Mr. Harrell.
That's my question. If you're going to include what you said into the letter, then would it be necessary for us to take a vote?
I would
That's
think
my question.
I would need a vote to speak for the entire board in a letter, I believe. That, Mr. Harrison?
Mr. President,
So on the discussion of the contents of the letter, that's where we all need to stay focused. What letter you send to the Bessie Board and the contents of it, how you say it. With regards to the legality of the governor's proclamation, that issue has been not addressed by the Attorney General. Any opinion the Attorney General rendered was not related to the current proclamation, but was related to one way back in June. And when you read that Attorney General opinion, it starts where the governor's June of 2020 proclamation may be unconstitutional, and the Attorney General goes on to describe how difficult certain proclamations are to enforce. When this school system consulted with lawyers, including myself and others who only give school board advice, the uniform advice back to the school board was that until it's changed, the governor's proclamation carries the weight of law because the Louisiana legislature gave him that authority in Title 29, 766 most specifically. Because of where we are as a society, we are in fact in a state of emergency, and it's the legislature that gave the governor this authority. So until a court rules otherwise, all lawyers are saying you've got to follow the governor's proclamation. The Attorney General is in a debate, and I respect that debate, but no court has ruled on that debate yet. And when a court did rule on it in 2020, it was in the 19th Judicial District Court, the judge in the state court ruled in favor of the governor. So I'd caution you to take any action with regards to legality. Just say to Bessie what you want to do. You have an existing policy. Everyone respected it. Everybody went for it. Your new policy is about to be handed down to you by Bessie. The governor and the Attorney General need to do their own thing. But for purposes of your letter, just say what you want to say to the board and don't get into the legality of avoiding the law as outlined at the moment. This is my best advice to you.
But in order for me to send a letter to Bessie on behalf of the board, we will need to take a vote?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And again, it went originally from a resolution from the board. Now we're talking about a letter, but procedurally, I think you clearly outlined your reasons for opening the agenda. It passed unanimously as required by statute. So you're now from a resolution now onto a letter.
Okay. Mr. Kuzan, were you finished your remarks?
if we already have a policy that we voted on and passed, I don't understand why the letter wouldn't be sufficient because you already have a policy that stated that the mask would be optional. That's what I don't understand. I don't understand why we would have to vote just to send a letter to Betsy.
I completely
That's my
understand.
question.
I completely understand your question. I respect it, sir. The issue is primarily because of the governor's proclamation. But for that proclamation, none of us would be wearing masks right now. And again, I don't want to get into the debate between the governor and the attorney general. I've read both. I've read the state law that backs it. So I've outlined the issue as carefully as I can without taking sides in it. The attorney general makes some great points, and so does the governor. So I'm not here to discuss the issue, except if it involves laws. And with a debate between the attorney general and the governor, the obvious solution with the courts would have to resolve it. And until that time comes, you've got to do your best to follow the dictates, in my opinion, of the governor. So the governor's proclamation is what overrode, if you will, your current policy.
Exactly, and that proclamation of the governor is the law, correct?
According to the lawyers that I've discussed with this issue on, and again, it's backed by, you've now got the parish president who's also issued an identical order. So it's gone from just the governor's proclamation. Now we've got St. Tammany Parish president issuing an order. So I think we're in a standstill position until someone resolves the debate for us. This board's opening of the agenda is to suggest you send a letter and use your opinions to influence that decision. That should come down from Bessie soon.
But that letter would be going to Betsy, right?
Yes, sir.
And not the governor.
Well, I didn't want to get into that issue either.
All right, okay.
Because that could, Bessie says one thing and the governor says another. I guess we all have more legal work to do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dermott.
Thank you, Mr. President. Personally, I have no problem sending a letter or resolution, or whatever you want to call it, to Bessie requesting parental choice on the mask proposal for the minor children. I do think that, as someone previously mentioned, the vaccine is readily available to adults. And so they have a choice to make, either get vaccinated, wear a mask, or don't get vaccinated and wear a mask or whatever. And our employees, we have a responsibility to those students that their parents choose not to mask or don't. And I'm not pro-mask or not mask or any, I'm not taking a stand on the mask. I'm taking a stand on the parents having a choice. That's all I'm saying. The parents should have a choice in what and how they deal with this in regards to their children. That's my only standpoint. As far as the governor's mandate right now, as far as what we've been told legally, it is binding to us. I am not going to break the law. If it says they got to wear a mask until it's proven differently, then we will enforce it. From my perspective, I am going to vote to enforce that issue because I am not going to break the law because we took an oath of office to enforce and follow the laws of Louisiana. Now, I do not have a problem with telling Bessie that I think because they are our supreme board authority, to consider and allow our parents to choose what and how they wish to mask their children. Fully supportive of that. I'm not going to go any further as far as asking or requesting anything else of Bessie, just simply that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dermott. Mr. Betancourt?
Thank you, Mr. President. This letter, I think copies should be sent. You mentioned Bessie, and you mentioned the Attorney General.
And the state superintendent.
What?
And the state superintendent.
Dr. Brumley?
Yeah, state superintendent. But I think we should go a little further and send a copy probably to the governor himself and also to LSBA, and maybe let some of these other school boards across the state, let them know, and they may follow suit. It might help. But I fully expect if Bessie were to rule along the lines of something that we like, and the governor doesn't abide by the attorney general's opinion, it's going to end up in court. So I just think we ought to notify a few more people and let everybody, hopefully jump on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Betancourt. Ms. Lamy?
I just want to say, I too was raised to be compliant, so I've always been strategically compliant. Until I actually got on this board and realized, like, I just always thought there was like an ultimate authority, like God, the law. And then I started seeing all these gray things. I realized that legislators and lawyers, and you have to prove and you have to weed through it. And it's not as black and white as I always thought that it was. And so I had a former representative, House representative. He served from 1972 to 2000, reach out to me, knowing my stance and how I feel about masking anyway, but also just on choice as well. And so he ran down he helped write the Louisiana Constitution, and he reiterated over and over and over again to me that it isn't legal. He explained that he's working with a group of legislators and gave me their names, and that they are, working to show that it is not legal, and that even if Bessie does say that we have to follow it, it's not legal for them to have, they still don't have ultimate authority. And I wrote down every law, and I wrote down everything that he said, and he's sending me all these different things, but I got off the phone and my head's just spinning, right? Because I'm not a lawyer. And so I'm just a teacher, a mom, a Christian woman that just totally believes the way that I do. And I know my constituents are split. The ones that are very vocal right now are the ones that feel the way I feel because we're being forced to do something. And if we switched it, the ones that would be very vocal would be the ones who want it to be mandated, I'm sure. But my point in saying this is, like you said, until you do more law work, right? Or somebody else said, until it finally does go to court. And that's what he ultimately told me. So he shared a story that just happened about a church, and he told me the name of the church and where it's located, and the religious thing that they filed that was approved through the courts. And he gave me all the scriptures and all the Bible verses that supported it. And of course, saying that a group would do better than just an individual person, because it does have to go through the whole process. I'm not saying any of this to encourage people to break the law, to disobey, but what I am saying is that we said we would follow suit and follow the law until it's proven that that's not really the law, that he really doesn't have the right. And I think that's why people are so frustrated, because overall, we feel like as Americans, we have a constitution, and, we have the Louisiana Constitution, and what it says is not what's happening. So again, I'm not telling people to rebel. I'm not saying don't listen. I'm not saying don't be wise, but I do believe that we have the right to voice an opinion. We have the right as a board to fight for our professional opinion, our personal opinion, but most of all, our constituents' opinions. So I just want to encourage that, because I feel like it's not black and white, and there's just so much research to do out there, and it's been overwhelming for me. But I just wanted to share that because I do feel like we need to do something.
Ms. Baker?
Thank you. I have this question. If we write a letter to Bessie on behalf of our constituents about choice, and we have, it's my understanding, just from what you've said, is that we will have to stay masked until they come up with a decision. Yes? No?
That's correct.
Okay. So if that's correct, and then our parish president says you have to mask, what has the ultimate authority, Bessie or the parish president?
That's a very good question. And I would,
Because
I
I'm
would
with
tell
Mr.
you-
Dermott, I'm not interested in breaking the law, and yet I understand as a parent with minor children, that I had a physician that wrote to me and he said, living is a risk. And a parent has to get up every morning and assess that risk and the risk and the outcome and make a choice as to what they want for their child. And I do definitely understand that. However, as a board member, I'm really not interested in, I'll write on behalf of my constituents. I don't have a problem with that. I agree with the vaccine. But what if we go through all this? Bessie says, okay, y'all do what you want, like they did in the summer, which I would, if I were a betting woman, I'd bet they'd say no, but let's go for it. And then the board can vote. And then our parish says we can't.
The best answer I can give you publicly without researching the issue is that this particular parish is going to be in the same boat as all the other school systems in the state. So if Bessie comes out with a policy that says you don't have to wear a mask, you're going to have an incredibly strong legal argument for following what Bessie says. It's the governing body over this one. It's the most specific one, okay? But if I can tie some of these issues together very briefly, because of the uncertainty, what happens is this. And I have worked with legislative bodies before, so I'm maybe a little more familiar with what is often very confusing. So laws, when written by the legislature, it's a really well-known concept that they're presumed valid until they're proven invalid by a court. That's the only one that can challenge it. All laws are subject to both U.S. Constitution and state constitutional analysis. But even the constitutional rights aren't absolute. So our rights to free speech aren't absolute. They can be limited to time, place, and manner restrictions, et cetera, et cetera. Just like rights to religion, just like your property rights. So what you've got here is two sides arguing the same facts, right? We are, in fact, in a pandemic, and I know very little about all the science, but I know that much, right? I mean, every day I can't turn off the COVID news, right? So that fact changes the authority to the governor under a legislative law that if we weren't in a state of pandemic, he wouldn't even have tried the proclamation. So where I'm going with this is the governor's proclamation is hinged on certain facts that if proven inaccurate, it's going to make his proclamation fall. But likewise, if those same facts are proven to be accurate, the proclamation is going to stand and Bessie is going to have a hard time debating the governor. But look, for us who follow rules, I counsel very simply, write your letter, say what you want, follow Bessie, and then you're going to be just like every other school system in the state, and the rest of it, it's going to play out fast, because don't forget, it's a 30-day mandate. So I don't even know if the courts could really weigh in on this issue in that time period. And remember, the debate is not so much about whether these things work. It's about trying to make it better. And I will leave you with this. Our constitutional rights tend to end when they impact somebody else. So I can't build anything I want next to my neighbor if it impacts him, right? So this silly mask, if it even helps a little someone else who has a compromised immune system, I'm happy to wear it. Now, what percentage of the time? I have no idea. So that's just kind of to get to the point is write the letter, follow Bessie.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Hersey.
I just want to make sure we're clear. I think just about everybody's asked all their questions. Or we're still staying with Mr. Nation's original motion, seconded by Mrs. Lamey, I believe. Whoever, Mr. Brill. And or have we added any other terminology to that resolution or letter by Mr. Nation? I don't think so.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hanks.
I have a couple of questions. Mr. Jabbia, help me remember, I know that COVID guidelines were developed, but I don't remember voting on them. I thought the administration put forth the COVID guidelines and, which is we have tasked you with that responsibility. Did we take a vote?
You took a vote in July, yes.
Okay, I
Yes.
just didn't remember, so I wanted to
Yes, ma'am.
backtrack and ask
Yes, ma'am.
that question. In the past, the board has sent a letter, I think it was to Bessie, it could have been to another legislative body. And we didn't vote to write a letter, if I'm remember my history correctly. A letter was drafted and board members were asked to sign the letter if they agree. Why would I agree tonight to sign a letter that hasn't been written yet? I mean, Mr. Nation has put forth what he would like in the letter. Some of it I could tolerate, other parts that he said I could not tolerate. I'm not going to vote to sign a letter that I haven't seen. Just makes no sense to me. I mean, I could go on about how I feel about, mask mandates or no mask mandates, but it's really maybe not even the proper time to do that. I thought it was important tonight that we kind of get this out in the open and discuss it, so that's why I made a yay vote to open the agenda. But like I say, I'm not going to make a yay vote to sign a letter that I haven't seen written. And so I would suggest to board members that if a letter is to be written, that our president write the letter and then you make the decision whether you want to sign that letter or not.
Mr. Green, did you have a comment?
Just real quickly, I think to expound on what Mr. Harrison said, I think what gives the governor these rights to issue these mandates is the declaration of an emergency with the advice of public health officials. I mean, he can't do this on his own, but he consulted with whoever, and then the law is pretty clear in that 760s range. I forget what if you read 762 through 766, it's pretty clear on what the governor can do. And so I'm with Mr. Durman that we need to obey the law, but I'm also with Mr. Nation that we can declare as a voice to our constituents that we want the choice to mask or not. But other than that, I'm not advising that we break the law in any manner, but I don't even know legally how Bessie can hear this, but so we'll see how that all shakes out. But I'm in favor of issuing some sort of letter or resolution saying that the people of St. Tammany should have a choice in whether or not their children should be masked. So, and hopefully the governor hears that message, because our real beef is with how those laws are written. That's with the legislators and what authorities we give our governor under those emergency proclamations. And until those are out of law, then we as constituents can have to obey that, or we choose to have latitude in our enforcement of those. And the law, and that proclamation, by the way, is pretty clear on where those exemptions are. And I would challenge this school board's administration, the administrations across our school, to operate with great latitude in those exemptions, whether they be religious or medical or what have you. I would also challenge the administration to, I wouldn't say force, but I mean, we promised these parents that they would have recess without masks, no pods, regular cafeteria schedules. So I'll get off my soapbox, but I do think we should issue a letter or resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Mr. Durman?
Thank you. Yes, I would just like to offer up secondary amendment or amendment to the motion that's on the floor that our letter or resolution addressed parental choice. And then that would be the only component of the letter. And that we would follow whatever law or whatever is issued by Bessie. Or they can give us the authority, whichever way they want to do it. But I think it should be limited to the students as opposed to a broad brush. I think we're dealing with the students and the parents' right. And I think that's what we should stay with.
Thank you, Mr. Dermott. Do we have a second for his amended? But I think, Mr. Dermott, you're wanting to remove any other items out of the?
Yes, my concern is with employees and adult people, because they have the choice to get the vaccine. They have other means to be safe. If they choose so. The children do not. And therefore, I think it's the parents have the choice as to how they want to proceed with their children.
Mr.
And
Dermott,
I think our resolution is dealing with Bessie when it's dealing with children. And I think that's where our motion and our letter or whatever should stay.
Like items 2 and 3, he just wants it to be parent choice.
And
And that should keep the letter pretty specific and simple.
And if Bessie wants to convey that authority to us, then fine. I mean, I'll take it either way, but I'm just saying the authority or the exemption or whatever should deal with parental choice. That's my personal feelings.
Do we have a second on that amendment? Mr. Nation, would you like to clarify 2 and 3?
Yeah. I've been wearing this damn thing. I'm gonna take it off for a second. All right. Here's what yes, number 2, and number 1 was, 1 and 2 are mirrors. 1 was that Bessie give us the authority, one was that Bessie issue rules that allow parents control of their minor children, just what Mr. Dermott said. Number 2 was Bessie give us the authority to do the same with our adult employees and volunteers, which I'm assuming they have authority over us with that as well. I don't like the fact they have the authority over us. I think it's a kooky system, but nonetheless, it's the system we got. And because, if a teacher's been vaccinated, and I'm begging all teachers and volunteers to get vaccinated, but if they've been vaccinated, I had to take this off because I just couldn't talk anymore. And I know teachers that are struggling to teach with these things on, and I don't think they should have to wear them in the classroom, even under the governor's mandate. I think we can make that exception because they're speaking to an audience, and the governor says that. But anyways, neither here nor there. So that was 1. 1 was parents, giving parents the right to to choose whether or not to mask the children. 2 was giving that same right to employees and volunteers. And 3 was, if they don't want to do it, let us do it. So going back to kind of what Mr. Kuzan says, our policy that we've already adopted, which that policy right now is illegal, or it's suspended, under the governor's mandate. But, we'd go to our fallback position. Let us choose. So that's, I don't have any issue with asking Bessie for our employees and volunteers, but that's just me. But I understand what Mr. Dermott's saying. I recognize what he's saying, but.
Ms. Heinz?
Well, Mr. Nation, your number 3 says if you're unwilling to do number 1 and number 2, then you give us the ability to choose, which sounds like you want to bring it back to the board and us vote whether we're going to follow the mandate or not. So there again is where I have a problem. I haven't seen this letter. I would not want my name associated with it. If that's, that's
Mrs.
what you
Hines,
said.
we already have a policy in place.
I understand the
Wait, Can we
policy.
get back to
Mr.
Mr.
You voted
Dermott's
for the policy
amended?
before.
Do we have a second for the? No second. Thank you, Ms. Baker. We have a second. Kids only. We got to talk.
Sorry, I said that the children are the ones that, in my opinion, that the parents should be able to speak for, that it really doesn't. What? They don't speak for themselves. They're, right. They're not.
Wait, Ms. Lamy, just.
Okay. I agree with Mr. Derman that it is the parents' right for the children, for them to choose for their children, yes or no, and then leave everything else off. I would agree with that.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Do we need a first or we? Thank you, Mr. Hersey.
Mr. Harrison, can you step up to the mic? Do you mind?
Yes, sir.
So can you instruct the board of what needs to happen next, since we have a secondary motion on the floor?
The secondary motion, if I understood you all, had to do with the content of the letter. Is that correct?
Correct.
Should vote on that secondary motion first before ultimately moving forward on your primary motion.
Right. All right, we're going to be voting on the amended motion.
And I hate to do this, but you're the one that opened the agenda. You got to allow public comment on your secondary motion before you vote.
On the site, but all right, so board comments on the amended motion, the amendment to the, wait, Mr. Hersey, you had something you'd like to say?
I would just like to add, if maybe not on this amendment, but on the item, before we vote on it, that we take a quick recess, burn a copy, print out a copy, and at least provide a hard copy to those involved. Would that be acceptable? Because that way I'm sure what we're voting on is not worded up later, and I believe that's the way it should be done, especially if it can be done in resolution form. If it's just a letter that we have to come out of the office, I have no issue with that. But right now, we're addressing the kids only by Mr. Derman. Should be opened up to the public to come speak right now, and then brought back to the board, and then we'll vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional board, Mr. Kuzan?
I'm with Ms. Hines. I can't go with that number 3. If Betsy gives us that authority, and then we're gonna come back and vote on, I can't go along with that. Not the number 3. I agree with Ms. Hines.
Mr. Harrell, I mean, I'm not.
Mr. Nation, Mr. Kuzan, are you done with your
We're in
remarks?
La La Land. We voted on this policy.
I was just going to say, if we were going to pursue a resolution to give parents the choice for their children, why wouldn't we include the faculty and staff in that same choice as well? Why wouldn't we add 2? That's all.
All right, Mr. Nation.
Well, I'm just confused because Mr. Kuzan just said a moment ago, we had a policy already in place about whether or not to make mask mandates. Ms. Hines has mentioned that. So I'm not sure where we're not connecting the dots here. If Bessie says, okay, we're not going to do it, but Mr. St. Tammany Parish, Mrs. St. Tammany Parish School Board, y'all can do it. Seems to me, you correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but we would just go back to our default policy that we have in place, or maybe not. I mean,
The policy we had in place did not include Betsy giving us the authority, even if.
Mr. Kuzan, the policy in place.
Were you here
The
when we
policy in
voted on
place
that?
allows mask optional for employees.
Exactly.
And so if Bessie says, we're not going to take a position on this, but we delegate our authority to you all to do this, logic would dictate to me that we just fall back to, there'd be no vote. The policy is already there. That would become the default position. But I'm like Paul, I didn't want to get into the legalities. I just want to say to Bessie, this is what we want. I personally think we should, I don't know why this board would not want the employees to be included, why we would exclude them. I mean, they have a right not to be masked too. or have a choice. But if y'all choose to go that direction, that's fine. As far as Mr. Hersey, I've got the text right here. I had already written it yesterday, so it's simple enough to print out.
Could I just ask that we have the policy that we passed in July read? Can somebody read that? And then we'll know from there which way we need to go. But I just don't think it included all that. Do we have that policy?
Ms. Heinz.
Mr. Harrell, technically, we're supposed to be discussing the amendment. But since we're a little bit out of order, unless you want to go ahead and vote on the amendment.
I think we still got to go to public comments.
Yeah, I realize that. We do public comment and then go back, if you want to go back to the other discussion, that's fine with me. So, but if you want me to make my comment now, I'll make it.
Please go ahead.
My comment is, Mr. Kuzan, you're right. We adopted a policy in July. But Mr. Nation is saying that if Bessie is unwilling to grant 1 and 2, then give us the ability to choose, he says, which would, I understand that you talk about it go back to our default policy, but then we have the governor's mandate, which we have to deal with. But, Mr. Nation, like I say, I mean, we probably ought to go ahead and
Thank you, Ms. Lamy.
2 things. I think what Mr. Nation was saying, that if Bessie doesn't want to say, okay, St. Tammany, you're allowed to do this because maybe Orleans is asking for this or Jefferson's asking for this. I think he's trying to say that number 3 would be, will you allow each school board to decide for their constituents in their parish? And if they said, Bessie is allowing each individual school board to decide for their constituents in their parish. And I would agree to that completely. The other thing that I was going to say is I absolutely 1000% want to include our teachers and staff and in this choice. I don't think anyone should be mandated, and anybody who disagrees, I challenge you to go teach with a mask for a week. And then tell me that you still feel the same way.
Thank you, Ms. Lamy. Mr. Nation? You're good. She said what you wanted to say? Got it. Ms. Baker?
I totally hear what you're saying, Ms. Lamy, and I agree. However, teachers and staff are receiving a paycheck. I don't know how you would get around not saying that that's a school board decision. And I think you're at risk for giving the parents a choice by including the staff and teachers. Look, I'm a teacher by trade. Like I get what you're saying, and I hear you. However, and maybe that would be different for volunteers, but if they're receiving a paycheck, I don't know how they could not receive. I think you're at risk for losing the plea, and that's how I feel about it.
Mr. Nation, would you?
Mr. Kuzan?
Mr. Nation, would you repeat your 3 steps, 1, 2, 3 again for me, please? I'm interested in that 3rd step. I'm not clear on it.
Certainly. All right. And let me just read because this is what I wrote yesterday while I was at a meeting. Bring it back up. And this was in the form of a resolution. But it could be a letter too, which is what I want. That the board hereby petitions Bessie to provide immediate relief to the parents and students of the St. Tammany Parish School System by adopting rules that allow parents to choose whether the child wears a mask or not. That's 1. 2, that the board hereby petitions Bessie to provide immediate relief to the employees and volunteers of the St. Tammany Parish School System by adopting rules that allow these employees and volunteers to choose to wear a mask or not. And then 3, that if Bessie is unwilling to issue such rules as herein petitioned by this board, that the board then petitions Bessie to delegate, and this is the issue. I mean, this is where I think where I've not been clear. If they have the authority, they don't want to exercise that authority, then they delegate to us that authority, just what Ms. Lamy just said. To delegate to the board the authority, their authority, to determine COVID-19 safety protocols such as temperature checks, the option of mask mandates or exceptions to mask mandates, and other protocols that this board seem fit. So all I'm saying is if Bessie doesn't want to do it, they may say, look, we don't want to do it, but we'll let you all choose, then that's fine. Whether we go back to the original policy, that was just my opinion, and that's all it is, but we might do something different. But I'm just, again, as far as the amendment, which is on the floor, I personally think we need to include, I can't imagine not including employees in that and volunteers. I don't see how it muddies the waters. It's just simply, we're asking the same thing for everybody's, we're being equal about it. Everybody's getting the, but so.
All right, let's keep it on the amendment on the floor. Any additional questions from board members? Ms. Heinz?
Before we would vote on that amendment, I'd like you to have it restated. I mean, we can listen to public comment first, but before we actually take the vote, I'd like you to restate it so that board members have no confusion as to what they're voting for.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Heinz. Ms. Coakley, would you mind? Do we have the first one? Wait, it's just going to be, we're voting on a letter written to the Bessies. She does, but all it says is 2 and 3. Coach. Right. But your item number 1, Mr. Nation, was strictly parental choice, correct?
That is correct. Item 1 is parental choice. Item 2 is employee and volunteer choice that we're asking Bessie. So as I understand the amendment to my original motion is that Mr. Durman would like to strike number 2, and then I guess number 3, because then that would allow, I mean, if you strike number 3, then that also impacts the parental choice. But so I'd be.
No, I'd go for number 3, having you know.
That's what I thought you meant, asking either.
I just don't think that If Bessie didn't want to make the decision and defer it back to us, number 3 is still fine. I just didn't want the employees, the parents. I wanted the parents to be able to exercise their choice for their children. Either way, if Bessie doesn't want to do it and gives us the authority, that's fine. But either way, we have to have the authority given.
So the way I understand it, we're asking Bessie and State Superintendent for the parental choice on whether or not students, their children can wear a mask, and if they're not willing to make that decision, to turn it over to local school boards. All right, Ms. Heinz.
A vote on this amendment is not a vote to send the letter, because we would go back and then have to make the decision about sending the letter.
Any additional board comments or questions? All right, we're moving on to public comments on the amendment. Do we have anybody that wishes to make a comment on the amendment?
I will, since
Okay.
nobody else will. Good Lord, I don't understand why in the world you would not put teachers in this amendment. There's absolutely no reason that we should be expected to be able to choose for our children, but that grown adults in our own parish can't make choices for themselves either. We're voting to be able for our parents to choose for our children, but not for adults to make that same decision for themselves. That doesn't make any sense. I think 2 should be left in personally.
Thank you, ma'am.
So I would certainly agree with her based on just logic, right? So, Mr. Durman, I think I would encourage all of you guys to be careful on the positions that you're taking and things that you're saying publicly and not be caught up looking and appearing to be hypocritical, right? So either we have faith in the fact these masks work, okay, which I think you've alluded to the fact that they don't. It's why you want children to have the right. If they don't work for kids, then they don't work for the adults. And so either we believe in that the fact that these masks are critical and should be used, or they don't, whether you're vaccinated or not. Kids don't
I
really
think
be
you
vaccinated.
totally misunderstand what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm not talking about the valid,
Mr. Darman. Mr. Harrison.
Sure.
But right now, it's just keeping the number 2 related to teachers and employees, and number 3 on whether Bessie will delegate down the authority to this parish to make a decision.
Yeah, definitely, obviously 3, and certainly 2, give the teachers the right.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Teachers should definitely have the right to be unmasked. You know, I have a son with autism. His biggest issue is verbal communication. What kind of message is he receiving right now with seeing his students and his teacher wearing masks?
Thanks, sir. Seeing no more.
Really doesn't have much to do with it, but out of respect for everyone in here, it might help if people wear the mask correctly while we're talking about this.
All right, seeing no more public comments, everyone please vote. And that motion fails with 3 yeas and 8 nays. Now we go back to the original motion that Mr. Nation put forth. Ms. Heinz.
Should this motion to send a letter pass, I would like to ask that it be added that the vote, whether to send the letter or not, be put within the contents of the letter.
Thank you, Ms. Heinz.
I certainly have no objection to that.
Okay. Any additional board comments regarding the letter being written? Seeing none. Do we have any public comments? Seeing none, everyone please vote. Mr. Green? If after this vote, we'll go back to the superintendent update questions? Yes. And that vote passes 9 yeas to 1 nay and 1 abstention. Thank you, Mr. Nation. Mr. Javid, do you mind if we go back to questions regarding board members? Mr. Green?
Just a real quick question. A gentleman back there alluded to it earlier. You know, either the masks work or they don't. So, and I also kind of talked about encouraging our administration to kind of operate with some latitude in these exemptions. I also forgot about the one speaking to an audience and being able to remove your mask. There's some other ones. But maybe you can help me understand this. So Bessie issues the, I think you called them minimum safe standards?
That's what we adopted last year.
Okay, so when Bessie, are these mandates that legally by law we need to follow? And
Correct.
specifically, I want to know about quarantines. So if we're in a room and we're wearing masks, we're not around each other for 15 minutes, we're 3 feet apart.
6 feet for adults.
So if you're a fourth grader,
Right. Child to child is 3 feet.
3 feet,
Correct. As
Wearing
long
a
as you're
mask.
masked. Right.
those children should not be quarantined, correct?
Right. As long as they're maintaining that 3 feet of distance and they have their mask on, they should not be quarantined. That's
So,
correct.
and so where I would again just challenge us, and we may not have any leeway here. I need to do a little bit more research about what we have to do under Bessie. Sounds like probably have to follow whatever they say, but we could then set our own policy in terms of quarantines if it weren't the case. We could say if a child's wearing a mask, vaccinated or not, they wouldn't have to be quarantined.
Bessie states that we have to follow the LDH's standards, so the quarantines are set by the LDH, who gets their guidance, of course, from CDC.
Okay.
And that's where that all comes through, and that's where Bessie's going to defer to all of those things. They're going to be charged with just are they going to address mask issue? That's what Bessie's going to do. Everything else that we're following is mandated by the LDH that we have to follow. Correct.
Okay, and do we have any schools where it's difficult to operate within that 3-foot rule? Like, we have class sizes?
We
that
have
are-
certain classrooms, I would think, where that would be a challenge. It would be far and few between, but I'm not going to sit and say that there aren't some classrooms where that's not a challenge, just by spatial and number of students that might be in that specific class. I think about certain high school classes where you only have one certified teacher in maybe a certain area where it's only offered maybe one time.
Okay.
It could be a large class, correct?
Okay, thank you. That's
No
all.
problem. No problem. Thank you, Mr. Green.
Any additional board member comments? Ms. Heinz?
Mr. Jabby, how's our enrollment looking? I visited 2 schools this week, and they said they were, or I heard through the grapevine with one, they were enrolling a lot of students.
We're still enrolling students. We're getting the counts tomorrow because when we got our original counts, kindergarten and pre-K were not in yet. So we will start with those official counts tomorrow. Talking to Mr. Bouillon, we're right now at about where we were last year, but we are still constantly enrolling students right now. So I expect us to be above the number last year. How much above, I'm not really sure yet, but I'll let you guys know as soon as I know tomorrow.
When you say above the count from last year, I'm assuming you're including our students who are virtual.
Correct.
And
Correct, which was around 37,000 students last year.
okay,
Correct.
because I mean, we usually gain students every year. Of course, last year was a little bit off and probably skewed. So, but I will be curious.
There were a
to hear
number
that
of
number.
parents that chose homeschool and other options because COVID was so unknown last year that influenced some parents. We've gained a whole lot of our virtual students back, but I'll be able to give you those numbers tomorrow as soon as we get them from the schools.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Mr. Betancourt?
Thank you. I'm just noticing, according to the proclamation by the governor, it specifically says that if you're 6 feet away from anybody else, you don't have to have a mask on. So shouldn't we be able to, everybody that's 6 feet away from everybody else should be able to take their mask off, or am I missing something?
That's correct. As long as you can guarantee 6 foot of distance around you, that is correct.
All right, whoever cares to take their mask off, I would say just stay 6 feet away from everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for worrying about everybody's comfort. Poor Mr. Jabby's got to keep his on. Any additional board comments regarding the superintendent update?
Yeah, I've got one more question. Well, that's because Mr. Harrell may have some bad breath, but that's, I do have a question about going back thank you to Mr. Green for pointing out about the teachers interpreting the governor's mandate that people who give a speech for an audience, I think, should include teachers personally. But having said that, specifically with our SPED kids, because someone mentioned, a member of the public mentioned this earlier, what about speech therapists and kids that are, and kids that have speech problems? I mean, how can a speech therapist work with a child, with a mask on? So
We provide a mask to them that is clear so that they can see their lips move. But as long as they stay, the problem is if we impede on that 6 feet and that employee becomes positive, that student's out.
Okay.
So that's an issue. But we do provide all of our speech therapists masks that are clear so that the students can see their mouth and they can work with those students.
But what about the students themselves? What about the SPEDs, the special needs student, him or herself? Do they get their mask, be able to take their mask off?
We've been honored. We've been working with parents. If it's in their IEP, that's something they need to do, we've worked with them. That goes under the medical exemption policy, and we've worked with parents where that's an issue.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Javier.
No problem.
Ms. Lamy.
Are we still offering virtual school for kids that don't want to? No.
Virtual is no longer an option. We cannot staff virtual, for one thing. We cannot meet the IEPs of a student on a computer. We removed about 150 teachers out of the classroom last year, and the ones that suffered are kids that are in school. So we do not have that option.
Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Any additional questions from board members? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Javier, for the update. We really appreciate it. Up next, we have public comments. Commenter number 1.
As you come up, please, if you would just state your name for the record, because we're not going to call out names. If you just state your name for the record so that Ms. Coakley has it. Thank you.
All right. I'm Christian Supreme from Slidell. I had a whole different speech, but I'm glad to hear that most of y'all realize that masks don't work, right? But bottom line is in the governor's mandate, it says medical conditions. It doesn't say you have to provide medical conditions. It doesn't say you have to go and get a doctor's note with your medical condition. It says you can have medical conditions and no questions asked. You have medical conditions. I've been everywhere. I've never worn a mask until I've came to this school board meeting last week, so I didn't have to try not to fight to get in, right? I have a medical condition. My son's got a medical condition. Why does my doctor tell me, oh no, your son doesn't have a medical condition, when I know he has a medical condition? He's came home plenty of times last year. I had to bring him ibuprofen last year because he keeps getting headaches in school. He went from A's and B's to C's and D's last year. Why not just allow the medical conditions, and that gives us all a freaking choice? Nobody has to worry about what Bessie says, what anybody says. If you really are following the governor's mandate, allow us to tell y'all that our sons and daughters have medical conditions. Because in my opinion, as I said last week, just getting your oxygen cut off is a medical condition. And breathing back in toxic carbon dioxide is definitely a medical condition. So allow us to really go by the governor's mandate, because as he just realized with the 6 feet deal, I was going to bring that up as well. I'm not sure if the 3 foot deal is in there. I think they're still trying to mask the kids with the 3 foot deal, which that in itself is nonsense. If you ask me, I mean, what's the difference between a kid and why is it 3 feet for a child and 6 feet for an adult? It's just all nonsense, right? But if we are going to, and HIPAA protects all your rights about going to get a doctor's note and saying, hey, look, this is why. So just allow us to say our kids have medical conditions, because they do have medical conditions. When you're sitting in a freaking classroom for 8 hours a day, you are having a medical condition, having that mask on. I don't know what that even says, but that's the bottom line. So go by the governor's mandate. If we're going by the governor's mandate, go by the governor's mandate all the way through. And the thing is, I was going to actually say the thing about the audience too. The teachers shouldn't have to wear masks because they got an audience. and they're standing up there, and I don't know how anybody could learn. I can't even look at people. I get psychologically messed up when I walk into Walmart and not even, oh, everybody's got a mask on. It looks like a bunch of dead zombies running around. It's ridiculous, all right? So follow the governor's mandate. Allow us to say medical conditions. We don't have to worry about what Bessie says. We don't have to worry about what anybody says. Follow what the man allows us to do. Thank y'all.
Thank you, sir. Commenter number 2, please. Please state your name and city.
My name is Candace Gurley, and I'm here today after emailing each one of you last week regarding the mask mandate. Mr. Betancourt, I appreciate your prompt response. You're the only one who did. Superintendent Jabbia, all week I have emailed you, and all week you have deflected your responses to Steve Alfonso. In email, he deferred to the governor's mask mandate and demanded medical documentation is needed. Pursuant to LA Revised Statutes 133715-1 and 129996-BI, schools are not listed as authorized recipients of medical records. Every document I receive from a medical professional is placed into my medical record. Therefore, your request for medical documentation of any kind is unlawful and necessary. The governor's mask mandate is clear. No one is required to have a note from a medical professional to prove a medical condition requiring a mask exemption. Superintendent Jabbia, while I appreciate your phone call almost 1 week from my initial email, and I appreciate that you were going to allow me to merely allow someone at the school board to review this medical record, I do not appreciate you believing that this school system is above the law. FERPA and PPRA do not equate to HIPAA. I am never obligated to give medical records, including notes such as this, to any school system, not for an IEP, not for a 504 plan, and not for a mask exemption. I have repeatedly asked for a copy of the school's policy regarding this, which I have to date never received. That tells me such a policy doesn't exist. I told you all that Unmask My Son would become Unmask Our Children, and it most definitely has. The one thing I have instilled in my children is to not lie down in the face of adversity. When there is injustice, continue to do the right thing. Follow your convictions and follow God. One day I won't be around to fight these battles for them. I have to teach them now that they are always worth fighting for. So today I ask all of you to stop for a moment and think about one thing. How can I entrust you with my child when I can't trust you to follow the law? It's time you decide where you stand on this issue, because this is now a revolution and I will not back down.
Thank you, ma'am. Commenter number 3, please state your name and city.
Joe Pepe, Slidell, Louisiana. I just want to express that I'm tired of the lies by local politics to promote masks and vaccines. This Monday, we heard our parish president, Michael Cooper, Charles Preston, and Michael Hill with St. Tammany Parish Health System flat out lie to our public and say that this is D-Day. Our hospitals are overwhelmed. Every seat is filled in our waiting room, and the line is wrapped around the building. He said, "You don't believe me? Come see for yourself." Those were his words, not mine. I have 100% proof that that is a lie, yet they are causing fear amongst our public with the placebo effect. I've seen it with my own eyes. Every hospital from Slidell, Hammond, New Orleans, every emergency room completely empty, no children in any of the waiting rooms. Charles Preston, I heard you say in your speech, listen to the experts and reference Johns Hopkins. Go to their website. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to look up the awarded grants that they have received and understand what's really happening to our medical community. I believe these hospitals are understaffed, empty beds, not enough nurses, because there is an urgent care on every corner. Let's stop the lies and let our community live. Seems to me that local government officials are seeking grants from the CDC to promote this fear amongst our citizens. It's being scripted out of their playbook across the country. Research CDC grants and do the research yourself. Yes, they have a playbook. It's on their website. If you live in St. Tammany Parish, type this in your web browser, thewar.us. That's www.thewar.us. Mr. Frank Jabbia, Superintendent, Google said your annual salary was over $200,000 a year. Last week, I heard you say your number one priority was the children's education. I have 3 children currently in the school system. My oldest son has autism, age 9. He's in the 3rd grade. His biggest issue is verbal communication. What message are we sending to the kids by implementing mask mandates? Other parishes, West Feliciana, have opted out of this mask mandate. Y'all have the power. Do you know the feeling of every day seeing your child and saying, hey, son, how was your day? And he can't even answer the question after 6 years of being in the school system. I can't help to think to myself that this parish is going backwards. Why don't we use the federal funding towards ending a real pandemic like autism instead of promoting masks and vaccines?
Thank you, sir. Commenter number 4.
Ms. Landsman, board members, my husband and I are parents of 5 young children at St. Tammany Parish. Unfortunately, masks can have negative impacts on children's social and development needs as a whole. The still face experiment was done and is very eye-opening as a parent. The child gets so distressed in the experiment that they are unable to console themselves. Are the masks not doing the same when they are trying to communicate with teachers, friends at a tender age? The young are extremely responsive to facial reactions, emotions, activity, and the social interactions from the world around them. My husband and I worry that psychological damage may manifest itself for years to come. I should, as their parent, be in control in weighing the benefits and costs of my children wearing or not wearing a mask. As time goes on, if this persists indefinitely, maintaining this control of our own kids' well-being due to the pandemic is essential. Our major health agencies have offered confusing and sometimes contradictory guidelines throughout this whole pandemic. I know that the school board is committed to the safety of all children. The superintendent asked us last week to give you all a chance to educate my children. I want to, but at what cost? Losing liberty when lost liberties are never regained is an unacceptable thing to me. Returning our parental right to have our own children wear or not wear a mask to school would be the right choice. Please stand with us. Parental rights for all would be intact. The parents' rights to choose is intended to protect and ensure the well-being of our own children, not the government and not the state. Please protect and stand up for our parental rights. We as parents need to be heard. I will never stop advocating for my children. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Commenter number 5. Please state your name and city.
Hi, my name is Logan Madden. I'm the father of 2 children at Lee Road Junior High. First, I wanted to lay out a few qualifiers. My brother, Clay Madden, holds an elective office in this parish as the mayor of Mandeville. I love my brother very much, but I do not speak for him. My remarks tonight are mine and mine alone. If you want to know how he feels about any of these issues, go ask him. Secondly, I'm a professional in the healthcare industry, more specifically in infection control. I have stepped foot in and worked with nearly every acute care hospital in this state. I'm intimately familiar with the data and the literature that I'm going to reference. If any of you would like to discuss it further at a later date, I'm happy to do so. Thirdly, I am a product of the St. Tammany Parish school system, as is my wife. I come from a family of teachers. My mother, mother-in-law, aunt, and uncle all retired from the St. Tammany Parish school system with over 75 years of service. It kills me to think that I might have to withdraw my children from the school system because of the unwillingness of y'all to act. I'm not here tonight to talk about mask efficacy. I think y'all have heard enough about that, and the literature is pretty clear, in my opinion. What I want to talk to y'all about tonight is risk analysis. So, per the national review, unvaccinated children pose less of a risk of death or severe reaction to COVID-19 than vaccinated individuals aged 30 to 39. Children are exponentially more likely to die by drowning, accidental injury, motor vehicle crash, unintentional firearm discharge, or medication ingestion than from COVID-19. So by the same logic behind this mask mandate, we should ban our children from swimming, riding in cars, living in a home with a firearm or medicine, while simultaneously wrapping them in fireproof bubble wrap. But we don't, because it's illogical and the societal cost would be too high. 18 months of masking children has seen exponential increases in anxiety, depression, substance abuse, overdose, and suicide. St. Tammany Parish has one of the highest per capita suicide rates in the country. Are you really willing to gamble with our children? I have not heard one word from the governor's office or the school board on any proactive measures in combating this pandemic. I have not heard one word of diverting resources to educating on our children on the immune system, how it works, how to strengthen it, such as with supplementation of vitamin D and zinc. We know 80% of the patients in the ICU are vitamin D deficient, or more outside class time, or combating childhood obesity, which we know obesity be a leading comorbidity in COVID-19 mortality. Mr. Jabby, in a recent WWL article, you're quoted as saying, at this point in time, this is a mandate from the governor we've got to follow. We have no choice. I'm begging parents, give our teachers a chance. Mr. Jabby, on behalf of the community, I'm telling you that that answer is not good enough. You do not get to feign impotence and recuse yourself. You are a leader. We need you right now. Also, as the son of a teacher, I took particular right with the fact that you said, give our teachers a chance. These teachers who I'm almost done, who are drastically underpaid, stretched thin, you're now asking them to wear the hat of a public educator.
Your 3 minutes is up.
The mask,
thank you,
police.
sir. Commenter number 6, please.
Thank you.
Can't do that. All right, commenter number 7. Are you 6 or 7?
6.
All right.
Hello, my name is Justin Bleeker. I live in Slidell. Forgive me for my broken words. I have reading difficulties. I was raped multiple times while attending school. The board was found negligent in this matter. They refused to pay the judgment. The employees that admitted to not doing their jobs, yet the board and superintendent refused to show accountability. Background checks is not on topic frequently here. My family and I have suffered for so long. Now my father is in ICU and may never see the end of all of this. We all just want you to do what's right. We have received no updates with Dr. Richardson has been allowed access still regarding background checks. The safety of our kids is a must. We need action. We demand accountability. We need you to do right by the kids.
Thank you, Justin. Sorry to hear about your father. Commenter number 7.
Hi, my name is Susan Wheeler. I'm from Slidell. First thing I want to say is thank you for listening to us tonight. We know that hearing a lot of this stuff is not easy repeatedly over and over through emails. And so we appreciate the opportunity to be heard. We are now I am now in the 3rd year with St. Tammany Parish of my children's school being affected by COVID-19 and the policy set in place by this board. My oldest daughter was a graduate from Slidell High School for 2020, her year cut in half. My daughter last year, an 8th grader at Slidell Junior High, masked all year long. And this year, my youngest daughter, 7th grader at Slidell Junior High, again, to be masked all year long. What I would like to say is that I don't know if you're aware or not, but my children developed strep throat 3 times more likely in the last year and a half wearing masks, 3 times more often than they did prior to being masked. Both my girls developed bronchitis, something that they had never had prior to being masked. forcing our children to rebreathe in these masks when in hospitals, they throw them away every 10 or 15 minutes and replace them. Our kids can't do this at school. It realistically is our job to control the health of our children. You are the Board of Education, not the Board of Health. We as parents should have the right to choose what we feel is best for our kids, whether we supplement them with magnesium, vitamin D, and zinc, which I do, to help supplement their immune systems, whether we choose to get vaccinated or we don't because people like me can't get vaccinated because it's contraindicated. But I'm not going to live scared, and we shouldn't, as a society, live scared from a virus that has a 97% survival rate. We've shut down our democracy, shut down our businesses, all based on a mandate that my 2 businesses in this state were shut down for 2.5 months. Come to find out, after they were shut down for 2.5 months, they didn't have to be because there's too much gray area in the governor's mandate. I lost one of my businesses because of that, because the gray area was not explained well enough. It doesn't make sense. We're here to protect our children, but that's a parent's job, not yours. It's your job to educate them.
Thank you, ma'am. Commenter number 8. Please state your name and city.
My name is Cody Luke. I live in Mandeville, Louisiana, with 2 young children, 7 and 9, that both go to St. Tammany Public Parish Schools. For a job, I actually chase COVID. So I'm the clinical director for a technology company out of Nashville, Tennessee. I'm based here. And I mainly work with law enforcement and corrections to tackle their problems they're having inside of the correctional facilities, as well as their offices and inside of their vehicles as well. For the past 4 months, I've strenuously studied how this virus spreads. And I can tell you right now today that the most dangerous thing about COVID-19 is as a surface-borne pathogen. When he opened up, I'm sorry, Mr. Nation, with all due respect, when you opened up your opening comments, just because your mask was on, you touched your face 7 times in about 2 minutes. This is something that constantly happens with children inside of schools. Not to mention the comments about the silent hypoxia that, that children are going through. And I don't care what anybody says. You put a mask on for 5.5 hours, you jump on a plane. When you get off, you have a headache. That's a fact. And whenever you're walking around, let me just, and I appreciate the medical knowledge there because I've also been in medical device sales probably for about 7 years now. So, and also acute care as well. 39% of people don't wash their hands after sneezing or coughing. 43% of children are not washing their hands enough. 44% of face touches involve contact with mucous membranes. Adults touch their face 23 times an hour on average. Adults will touch their faces 184 times in a normal workday, and that's not even children. Only 67% of people practice proper hand hygiene, and on average, you come in contact with 300 surfaces in 30 minutes. Everything inside of a school is made of plastic, pretty much. Plastic and bacteria get along very well. About 80% of diseases are transferred by touch. So that's something to take into effect because I distribute top NASA-developed technology that's FDA compliant through testing with the Cleveland Clinic as well as military testing labs. It takes 3 to 7 hours to remove COVID-19 off of surfaces at 100% reduction and about, 3 minutes to about 60 minutes with top superior technology. So you're looking at about, you can obviously see that it's more difficult to remove something off of the surface. Now, I can tell you on June 6th of this year, I approached your school board with a solution that has not been mentioned or anything that goes beyond a mask. Superior technology developed by NASA that is FDA compliant has been proven effective in air and surface reduction of COVID-19 in 3 minutes in the air and 3 to 7 hours on the surface. We have schools across the country. Philadelphia just made a huge investment in this, yet we're sitting here wondering why, and I sent a follow-up email the other day of which I got to return that my email would be archived. So over 2 months, and nothing has moved forward with the technology to keep our children safer with a more advanced form of a solution.
Thank you, sir. Commenter number 9, please state your name and city.
Ladies and gentlemen, Adam Elliott, Mandeville. I came in here originally to talk to you guys about the mass, as I have 2 kids as well going for their first year in this parish. I left this beautiful state of Louisiana in 2004 and served my nation honorably for 16 years. Was medically retired, and now I reside here in Mandeville. My fiance and I went back and forth on where we wanted our kids to go to school. This public school parish, being 16th in the nation, was an easy seller in Louisiana. I grew up on the South Shore. I went to private schools. I never even thought about public schools, okay? Now, I sat here and listened to all these parents. I listened to each and every one of you. Tried to, I apologize. I'm deaf. Are we really discussing voting on our choice? Have any of you been to any other nation where tyranny and dictatorship told parents what to do? That is essentially what you guys are talking about here. And it blows my mind that after all these tours of duty with the military and other government agencies, I come home to my homeland and see this transpiring. It's unbelievable how much gray area. Your lawyer can't even tell you unequivocally whether or not the proclamation is law or not. He cannot tell you that. What is that not telling you guys? Come on now. Y'all were all elected in here. My parents have been in this parish for years. They all spoke highly of you guys before we chose to move here. Because y'all stood for your constituents, for your people, okay? I stood behind you and moved my whole family here because of that reason. Do your job and be leaders. Allow the parents to make their choice. Are we really, I keep hitting on this in my head. Are we really discussing voting on whether or not I can make a choice for my own child? That's ridiculous, guys. I've seen how this goes down in third world nations and how bad and terrible it is. We're going down a scale that is not good. Not to mention what my buddy here just talked to you guys about what the kids are actually being affected in school. I take my kids for a ride in Trace, the beautiful Trace, right? Every day after school because they're in mass for 8 hours. That's ridiculous. That I have to ensure they're getting enough oxygen in their lungs after they're sitting there breathing carbon dioxide. I'm getting too upset, guys. Look, I'm gonna sum it down and just say it like this. Y'all were elected to be leaders for our community. Please do the right thing. Please make the right choices. Please stand for us. We need you to stand for us, okay? I appreciate my time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Commenter number 10. Would you please state your name and city? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jesse Henry. I have 3 kids in St. Tammany Parish Public School System, ranging from 3rd grade at Lancaster Elementary to sophomore and senior at Mandeville High. Personally, I'm a proud St. Paul's alumnus. However, I made the conscious decision to send my kids to public school, given my perceived view on the public school system in our parish and especially in our district. I stand here in front of you to beg and plead to the school board to educate our kids and avoid playing a critical role in a multi-billion-dollar COVID fear campaign and mass marketing campaign. Last week, one of you shared with us that you sought out and then passionately cited statistics like the percentage of school-age students who are testing positive with this new variant versus what I guess is the old COVID. But why did you stop there? Why didn't you provide further data and stats? Why are we not talking about the fact that these kids are no greater threat than they have been after year as it relates to the common flu? This board then informed us that masks are the best and only way to protect our kids from this man-made virus. Leadership choosing to only cite those 2 points did not sit very well with me. In 3 minutes, I don't have time to debate all things associated with this virus, where it came from, the fact that it's man-made, the obvious facts that the virus has been weaponized against us, nor do I intend to debate the effectiveness of this costume mask that our kids are wearing from companies like Old Navy, Justice, and God knows where else. You know and we know the masks do not work. We all know these masks are pure theater, and we're all sitting back and watching our kids being used and abused as strategic chess pieces. So my ask to this board is, instead of choosing to cite these points above alone, why don't you take all this opportunity to be different? How about you do something absolutely crazy? Why don't you push on our children real life-saving preventative guidance? Why don't you educate our children on the importance of quality nutrition, the specific vitamins and essential minerals that directly improves our kids' immune system and absolutely have been proven to protect them from COVID and certainly reduce the impact of COVID? Why not put real energy around helping kids connect the dots on how important an active outdoor lifestyle is as it relates to offsetting the risk of COVID? You see, us logical thinking conspiracy theorists recognize that our government is conveniently not educating us or our kids. Many of us moved to St. Tammany Parish at one point or another, primarily because this parish is different. And part of what makes this parish different was a school board and the school system. Let other parts of this dead last state, like these other parishes, do what they want. Let the group thinkers out there blast us on social media and local news stations and radio like they did last week and claim we're a bunch of uneducated, radical, conservative rednecks while they flounder around in their cesspool. Here in St. Tammany Parish, we do things different.
Thank you, sir. Moving on, commenter number 11. Please state your name and city.
My name is Donna Sullivan, and I live here in Slidell. And I'm 65. I've got grandchildren. I've got nieces and nephews. My mother, my father, my grandfather. We're all from here. We have deep roots. And I'm standing here for all my nieces and nephews and everybody that's talked here. I'm so proud of y'all because they speak at how a lot of people are talking. All my family, and I got a lot of family here. We're losing our freedoms. What's happened? I've been here for years. My grandfather, my great-grandfather. I can't understand what y'all doing. I don't understand. Explain it to me. How did we get here? How? I never in my life thought I would see this. Our ancestors had fought for our freedoms and everything. And here we are. Look what we're doing. Look what we're doing. We don't have freedom. It's little by little being taken away from us. And everybody's wanting to control things, our choices, what we do with our kids, where we go, what we do, what we wear. I mean, I believe in being appropriate and respectful. I believe in God and our country. They spoke it. This is how I feel, and I respect y'all, and I'm hoping and praying y'all do the right thing and think about y'all's ancestors and how'd y'all get here? Who put y'all here? Think, please. God bless everybody.
Thank you, ma'am. Commenter number 12. Please state your name and city.
Hi, my name is Dakota Henry, and I'm a sophomore at Mandeville High School. I take pride in school as I maintain a 4.57 GPA while being on both the varsity soccer and track team last year. I bring this up to prove that I don't just go to school to go through the motions. I go to get an education. And as a student, I will tell you firsthand that masks add a whole other obstacle to learning. For instance, it is extremely difficult to understand and obtain information from our teachers because they take away our ability to read lips and see facial expressions, which help us better understand what we are hearing. We also are not able to form bonds with our teachers and peers because of the masks, which limit social interaction and, again, facial features. Classrooms today feel so lifeless and dry that it feels like we are all robots and have no personality. And just imagine how hard it is for kids younger than me, like my sister, who come home every day saying how hard it is to learn and breathe. Wearing masks make it a very uncomfortable experience at school and to learn, yet the school system claims that they try to make school and ultimately the learning environment pleasant. No, if I were giving up these things so that I would not be seriously harmed, then I would be all for it, and I'm sure everyone else would too. But the truth is that this is not reality. There are 0 studies which prove that these masks are preventing us from getting COVID. I actually found an article on the CDC's website which states, in pooled analysis, we found that no significant reduction in influenza transmission with the use of face masks. 2 studies in university settings assessed the effectiveness of face masks for primary protection by monitoring the incidence of laboratory-confirmed influenza among student hall residents for 5 months. The overall reduction in ILI, or laboratory-confirmed influenza cases in the face mask group, was not significant in either study. Since both COVID-19 and influenza are both about 100 nanometers in size, it is no surprise that the masks deemed insignificant in the study. So then I have to ask, why are we still literally forced to wear masks with no valid evidence supporting them? Why do we still have to be quarantined if these masks are supposed to work? Why do we have to be faced with these unnecessary burdens? The logic just does not add up, and with all due respect, whether you agree with me or not, I ask that you have the courage to voice your opinions like I do mine and stop hiding behind the mandate. Thank you.
Thank you, Dakota. I know that took a lot of courage to come up here and talk. Commenter number 13.
Good evening. My name's Heather Watkins, and I spoke last week, so I won't go over everything I talked about last week. I just have a little bit to say. I believe we all can agree that oxygen is an absolute for humans to survive. Within moments, without oxygen, we all will die. In my opinion, anyone that can be convinced to put on a face covering that provides you of less oxygen can and will be convinced to do anything. So with that said, and still no proof that face coverings provide any protection from the spread of viruses, you will never convince me that providing our students, my children, from fresh oxygen is saving them from anything. It's actually harming them. Please fight this mask mandate, not just for our students, my children, some of your children, but to set examples for other parishes around our state and counties around the country. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Commenter number 14.
Good evening. My name is Michael Lawrence. I'm back just to finish up a couple key points I didn't get to finish last time. So I'm not going to sit here and lecture about masks and all that. Everybody's got their own personal belief about it, which is fine. I believe it should be personal choice. But one thing I really wanted to address is the fact that some of you may or may not know this. St. Tammany Parish is ranked #1 in the state for childhood suicide and adult suicide. That's an alarming statistic. We're ranked one of the highest localities in the nation for the same. That's alarming. It wasn't until right at the beginning of the summer when my children had to bury a friend. This kid was much like my middle son. Excellent grade point average. Any school in this parish would want him. My son also struggled a little bit as well because he had to be quarantined 5 times, never got COVID, never tested positive. He's a 4.5 GPA student at North Shore High School. All into the grades. His friend was much the same. So that's a big shock that a 15-year-old has never driven a car, never dated a girl yet, too focused in his grades. Both of these kids were going to graduate with an associate's degree from high school. One of them in here. These masks do a lot more harm to our children than they do good. Just a psychological aspect. Forget about the germs. Kids are dirty creatures. My youngest one, germs will run from him. He only wash his hands after come back from hunting. I got to get on him all the time. I seriously think the germs run from that child. So there's arguments on both sides of this. Mine is mainly dealing with mental health. My neighbor's daughter, first year at North Shore High School. She's a smart kid. She just got quarantined today. Had a little conversation with her, asked her how school was going. She knows that my middle son's going to that school. He's a junior this year. Look out for him. At least you know somebody. She's coming from a private school to now a public school. Cannot ID any of her classmates. Cannot identify any of her teachers. doesn't know if she's doing right or wrong by her peers, by facial expression, doesn't know when the teacher's saying anything to her, if she's smiling at her, or if she's kind of looking down upon her because maybe she gave the wrong answer, she's looking for something else. She's nervous in a school, brand new, doesn't know anybody, she's in a faceless society. That's a big key factor to development. Even you and I, we're in here, we're all adults. You can tell by my face and I can tell by your face how we're feeling, whether something's genuine, whether it's not.
Thank you so much for your comments, sir.
Thank you.
Commenter number 15.
How y'all doing? Good evening. My name is Jason Lowe. I have a daughter, just started North Shore High School. I'm also a product of the school system. Graduated in '92 from North Shore. Thank you for your time. I know you're hearing a lot of the same stuff over and over again, and I'm probably going to say some of that stuff too, but I have to say it. We're in our second year of COVID. All of us have been affected greatly, some more than others. Our losses have been great. COVID is going to be here from now on, and we must accept it in some way, form, or another. Some will have us believe that if we do this or that, it will go away. I think we can all agree now that is not the case. With science constantly changing to maintain narratives, we must step back as a community and ask, how do we go forward from here? In the beginning of this, we were all okay with mandates for our own good, for our children's own good, right? That time is past. Variants are going to keep coming. We're under attack, but not only by COVID, but by our own leaders. Hypocrisy from elected officials on every level has now truly been exposed to the ones who seek information from sources other than mainstream media and Facebook. To the ones who sit around and watch the news all day, they will say, I can't believe they don't want to just wear the mask. What's the big deal? The big deal is that when does this end? We will be hit with mandates every time the COVID strand of the month comes to town. Mask on, mask off. This is a road we will not continue to go down. People are sick of it. Aren't you? Aren't you getting tired? We're all big boys and girls here and assume risk every time we leave our homes. These masks do not allow our children to communicate, to understand each other properly, or just be a kid not living in fear. There is so much to be said for that. Should we cower in fear from now on? We will not. Some may, but most of the people I know are not. We look to our leaders to make the choices for us, including this body here and now on this matter. Don't say it's out of your hands. You have been called to go against the grain of pandemic politics and blatant local government and school board overreach. I do not envy you. After hearing your people plead to you about parental choice in regards to forcing masks upon our kids, you have some things to think about. We are not going away. This moment in time and how each and every one of you handle this situation in particular will be remembered by all. I would venture to say this may be what defines your legacy on this board. It's my choice to mask my child or not. It's not yours or anyone else's, especially any government entity, period. Will you listen to the people that put you here or not? Whatever power you do have, fight with us, not against us. Our kids need you now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And commenter number 16.
Hi, hello, everybody. Can I lower these? Do you mind?
Those are perfect.
Okay. All right, hello. My name is Danielle Koster from Slidell, and I was a student of St. Tammany Parish Schools for grades K through 12. Tonight, though, I'm coming to you as a concerned parent and patriot. Also, to add to this before I begin, I am not oblivious to the human body, as my BA degree from the University of New Orleans is in health and psychology. When I first looked at the agenda that the school board has set forth, I couldn't help but see the hypocrisy of it all. I observed the guidelines regarding the safety of the children wearing masks within our school district, which took everything out of me to not laugh because I knew that this was a joke. Why was this a joke, you ask? Well, because children are nasty. Children do not have proper hygiene in the bathroom. They pick their noses, stick their hands in their pants, have their snacks still in their hands, touch their faces and their friends' faces, and children's school transportation is just as grimy. Also, when I say children, I mean of all ages, not just a certain age bracket. All these pathogens are attaching themselves to our children's masks, which you are mandating for them to wear. So now they have a cloth over their face with harmful pathogens on them, such as E. coli, RSV, or any other bacterial as well as viral illness that they can potentially pick up while in school. As you know, they cannot wash these masks off like they can to wash their hands, but they must continue to wear them for 8 hours on end, which is absurd. You are simply worried about getting sued because you had a positive COVID student on your hands, but who am I going to sue when my child becomes susceptible to another respiratory virus that could come from her mask wearing? You keep talking about funding, but we have heard from Dr. Fauci and the Surgeon General at the completion of their life studies that masks do more harm than good. With the political agenda change, Dr. Fauci and the Attorney General's feelings have changed towards the significance of mask wearing. As stated per Dr. Fauci in an email to the former Secretary of Health and Human Services, Ms. Sylvia Burwell, quote, masks are for really infected people to prevent them from spreading infection to people who are not infected rather than protecting uninfected people from acquiring infection, end quote. When this mask mandate was set in place is when this became a concern, as well as the perversion tonight to science. I expect the superintendent to worry about funding, but we the people are not worried about funding. We are not going to be bought out by the almighty dollar. We know the science that we have heard, and research proves that a child wearing a mask does more harm than good. Shall we address the least invasive solutions for once that we can approach the situation by with, besides mask wearing, such as natural herd immunity and personal hygiene? Finally, you and everyone else in this room know that the mask is just a political ploy at this point, and we are facing a Goliath. Not only have we voted you in for the development of education for our children, but also their safety as well. It is up to you guys to be bold, strong, and stand up for our children, because this is child abuse and is totally unnecessary. Please do not be the ones that aid in the overreach of this country. I need you to stand up to the Goliath, even if the funds are sacrificial. We need to have normalcy amongst our children, and none of this qualifies as normal. Enforcing this mandate, which I might add is not a law, is taking away our freedom of what is best for our children. You do not know what is best for our children, as each child is their own unique individual self, and we the parents should decide what is the best course of action for our child.
Thank you so much. Ms. Coakley, is that all the public comments? Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 3, item A, to consider and take action with respect to adopting a resolution providing for the issuance of taxable general obligation school refunding bonds, Series 2021A of St. Tammany Parish-wide School District Number 12 of the Parish of St. Tammany, State of Louisiana, prescribing the form, fixing the details, and providing for the rights of the owners thereof, providing for the payments of the principal of and interest on such bonds and the application of the proceeds thereof to the refunding of certain bonds of said district, and providing for other matters in connection therewith. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Mr. Betancourt. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Green. We have Ms. Terry Prevost able to answer any questions or comments from the public. Let's let the public go first. Seeing none, board members, do you have any questions for Ms. Prevost? Seeing none, everyone please vote. And that motion passes unanimously. Item B, approval of the minutes for the regular meeting held July 15th, 2021. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Mr. Kuzan. Do I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Baker. Do we have any comments by the public? Seeing none, do we have any questions by board members? Seeing none, everyone please vote. And that motion passes unanimously. Item C, appropriate retirement resolutions for following certificated personnel subsequent to July 15th, 2021. Mr. Kosei.
Thank you, President Harrell, Superintendent Giabbia, Board. Item C is the appropriate retirement resolutions on the following certificated personnel subsequent to the July 15th, 2021 meeting. Sharon M. Chapman, Harrison Curriculum Center, 45 years, 41.19 years in St. Tammany Parish. Kathy B. Mitchell, Lakeshore High, 29 years, 19 years in St. Tammany Parish. Anna J. Pignato, Magnolia Trace Elementary, 21 years, 20 years in St. Tammany Parish. And finally, Patty M. Holden, Riverside Elementary, 18 years, all in St. Tammany Parish.
Do I have a motion? Thank you, Ms. Baker. A second by Ms. Lamey. Do we have any comments by the public? Seeing none, any questions by board members? Seeing none, everyone please vote. And that motion passes unanimously. Item D, the appropriate retirement resolutions for the following employee support services personnel subsequent to July 15th, 2021. Mr. Kosei.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. Item D again is appropriate retirement resolutions on the following employee support services personnel subsequent to the July 15, 2021 meeting. Elizabeth L. Dove, Bayou Lacombe Middle, 9.43 years, all in St. Tammany Parish. Sandra D. Penn, Covington High, 18.04 years, all in St. Tammany Parish. Donna C. Marlborough, Lee Road Junior High, 23.78 years, all in St. Tammany Parish. Connie C. Talley, Lee Road Junior High, 13.56 years, all in St. Tammany Parish. Lisa M. Jennings, Pearl River High, 19.94 years, all in St. Tammany Parish. Douglas E. Collins, Transportation Center, 31 years, all in St. Tammany Parish. Edison J. Doucette, Transportation Center, 19.84 years, all in St. Tammany Parish. Alan A. Hingle, Transportation Center, 31.65 years, all in St. Tammany Parish. Raymond L. Clackle, Transportation Center, 26.73 years, all in St. Tammany Parish. Teresa C. Skaggs, Transportation Center, 22.93 years, all in St. Tammany Parish. And Russell L. Yates, Transportation Center, 16.27 years, all in St. Tammany Parish.
Thank you, Mr. Darman. Do I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Lamey. Do we have any comments by the public? Do we have any questions from the board? Seeing none, everyone please vote. And that motion passes unanimously. Item 4, approval of recommendations from committee as a whole meeting for Finance and Administrative held August 5th, 2021. Mr. Green, would you like to?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Harrell. The committee recommends acceptance of Salmon High School waterproofing. Phase 1 is substantially complete, subject to architect's recommendations, submission of all regulatory requirements, and approval of Superintendent Jabia. STPPS project number R0078.
Mr. Hersey, would you like to make that motion? Thank you, Mr. Kuzan. Thank you for seconding. Do we have any comments by the public? Any questions from board members? Seeing none, everyone please vote. And that motion passes unanimously. Mr. Green?
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. The committee also recommends acceptance of Slidell Junior High School roofing. Phase 3 is substantially complete, subject to architect's recommendations, submission of all regulatory requirements, and approval of Superintendent Jabia. STPPS project number R0087.
Do I have a motion, Mr. Bro? Do we have a second? Mr. Nation, thank you. Do we have any comments by the public? Any questions from board members? Seeing none, everyone please vote. And that motion passes unanimously. Up next, it's my turn to speak with the president announcements. A public hearing concerning the input for the proposed budget for fiscal year 2021-2022 will be held on Thursday, August 19th at 6 p.m. There will be a public hearing on emergency elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds immediately following the August 19th budget hearing. The September committee as a whole meeting will be held on Thursday, September 2nd at 6 p.m. The schools and offices will be closed on Monday, September 6th in observance of Labor Day. An executive session has been requested pursuant to LRS 4217A2 to discuss the following matters. Michael Alexander et al. Versus Velma Warren et al. At 22nd Judicial District, docket number 2017-14490H. And B, Crystal Bunell versus St. Tammany Parish School Board et al., 22nd Judicial District, docket number 2020-15139I. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Green. Any comments by the public? Any questions from board members? Everyone please vote. Verbally. All in favor? And that motion passes unanimously. We're now going into executive session, but we will take a 5-minute recess.